I was never good at the rules because the rules were too confining for me. Because my vision of the world was so grand that the basic rules of life did not fit within the scope of my thinking. Because I discovered a long time ago that the rules were put in place to suppress. Welcome back. This is The People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am The People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we thank everyone who has taken some time out to listen to the podcast today. We do understand that you could be utilizing your time to do something else, so we do appreciate you tapping in with us to listen to the podcast. As always, if you find this information to be valuable and you feel it to be worth sharing, we do ask that you subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll be notified when each episode is released. We do put out a new episode each and every Friday, which is heard on all podcast platforms. And we also then put out a video on YouTube every week as well, for those of you who would like to watch the podcast. But as always, thank you and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. Today, I want to talk about food. Today, I'm going to talk about food. And specifically, I want to talk about foods that have a high potential to make you sick. This is beginning of the year, and for many people, the big goal or resolution for those of you who practice resolutions and, beginning of year goals. The big one is diet, right? When you talk to people, I'm going to lose weight this year. I'm going to get in better health this year. I'm going to, be better about how I eat. And so I figured I'd talk about this today because in the switching of those diets, oftentimes many people will switch to what they consider to be healthier, right? Air quotes for those of you who are listening, foods. And, a lot of these foods are healthier, right? I don't want to, miscategorize that. But when you start switching over to those foods, sometimes you may not be aware of the preparation methods that are required to, have these foods properly consumed. So I figured I'd talk about that today. So today I want to talk about foods that can, potentially make you sick if they're not properly prepared or stored. So I was kind of doing some research on this, and I came across an interesting article from Cosmopolitan where they talked about 22 foods that can make you sick. And in this article, they go through, pretty much every food that you can think of. But I thought what was interesting that kind of stood out to me about the article was there were a lot of vegetables on here. And I think, sometimes many of us, and even myself, we forget that, these vegetables come from obviously, open fields, but a lot of them come from, soil, and then they're transmitted to, they're handpicked, and then they'll go to manufacturers or companies where they're processed, and then they're washed and chemicals. So there's a lot that goes into it. So by the time it gets to your plate or to your store when you're picking them up or you're getting it delivered, I know a lot of people do the Instacart thing, which I'll talk about that as well. It can, contamination can occur. So this article kind of went through the different foods where contamination has occurred often. Not often, but has been reported. And so I want to talk about those foods. I'm not going to talk about all 22, obviously, but I'll kind of hit on those that came to my attention. One of the first things that I saw in the article, they were quoting the FDA and the Food and Drug Administration, for those who who may not know that acronym. But in the article, they quote it here, and I'm reading directly from the article. It says, while you won't necessarily get sick from eating just a little bit of bacteria, it can double in number at room temperature, anywhere from 40 to 140 degrees in as few as 20 minutes. And I thought that was, very good information because, and again, I'm talking about myself. I'm not excluding myself. There's been times where, you leave stuff out maybe on the counter. You're like, oh, okay, I'll come back and get, maybe eat some more of that in a few hours or something like that, not putting it back into, a refrigerator or refrigeration. And, right here in the article, it says, in as little as 20 minutes in room temperatures, you can have the number of bacteria that are in these foods double. And so this can lead to potential food poisoning and, being sick by food. But one of the first ones that they had on here was raw sprouts, And, sprouts, I actually like sprouts. And so that's why I saw it. I was like, whoa. But, sprouts, can be obviously used in various foods, but, sometimes they're used as garnish as well. But it says here, in this article, because of the alfalfa seeds that are, I lost my train of thought. The alfalfa seeds from the sprouts, they can contain E. coli in them, right? This is from the time they're pulled, transported, and onto your table. And then the conditions that the sprouts grow from can then even create more bacteria, right? And I don't want to get too technical and get too much into a scientist, microbiologist talk, but it is important. Basically, what I'm trying to say, it is important that if you're eating sprouts, make sure, and I'll read directly here from the article. It says, if you want to eat sprouts, make sure that they're thoroughly rinsed and thoroughly cooked. And then they give some recommendations. You can go to foodsafety.gov to get additional recommendations regarding that. The second one they talked about was leftover soups and stews and stir fries, which I think is a big one. I know, for me, especially, depending on the time of the year, or even if I'm sick sometime, I might like to eat a nice soup. And, it is important that, and based on this article that I'm reading, not only is storage important, right, of leftover soup, but you also want to make sure that you are reheating those meals at least 165 degree temperature. Because if they're not reheated properly, a lot of these foods, especially here in this article that they're talking about, stir fries and soups, can lead to you possibly, becoming sick as a result of that. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all of them. I think the third one that stood out to me was leftover rice because I am a rice eater. As I said, the bean sprouts, I like bean sprouts, and usually that's one of my dishes, bean sprouts and rice. So here it talks about leftover rice, and it says leftover rice can be harboring the toxin-producing bacillus, I hope I'm saying that right, which is the type of bacteria that is picked up in rice fields, and it can survive even after cooking. So that's why it's basically saying here it's important that if you eat leftover rice, it says, basically don't save it don't save it for more than a day. And it recommends that, you eat rice when it's cooked, which I got to tell you, when I saw this, I was like, whoa, because I've eaten 4-day old rice. Now I've reheated it, right? But I thought that was, kind of something that stood out in terms of this article. It then goes through, several other foods. Like I said, they talk about 22 foods, fruits, obviously, which is, a big one as well. And I'm talking about this again because I know many people are adding certain foods to their diet or they're taking out certain foods. But it talks about, fruits as well. It says fruit salads also contain produced from, fruits which come from multiple farms or orchards can possibly, become contaminated along the way. Because again, you got to remember, not that you have to remember, but just as a FYI, by the time that food or that vegetable or that fruit gets to your dinner table or your kitchen, it has gone through a process from the time it was picked, the time it was, packaged, processed, shipped, put back into the store, and then gets to you. So, just again, some things to beware, because and it says here about fruit. It says that food that is exposed sits around for much longer can be exposed to more pathogens. And then it kind of goes through a whole list of other foods. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll put the link in the video if you want to review them. But I just wanted to kind of highlight them. I see one here that I want to talk about just real briefly. It talks about cans. If you receive a punctured can or a swollen can, this is, for those of you that eat canned vegetables or canned fruits, or, beans, and I've seen pretty much everything in a can nowadays. If that can is swollen or punctured, they say do not eat food that comes out of that because it will make you sick. And that kind of goes to my Instacart conversation real quick, because I know so many people are now getting food delivered via Instacart or via some of the other delivery methods. And, also people are, now having people go in the different supermarkets and just ordering their food and then going to pick it up in their car. They're not shopping themselves, which, I think I've said it, a few times on this podcast. I'm big on shopping myself. I don't, that process of picking out fruits and vegetables and stuff like that, I'm very particular about. But in this case, just FYI, for those of you who do, go use that method, just be aware that, if you're a delivery person or if you go to pick up your groceries, if you see any cans that are swollen or punctured, do not eat the food in there because they can cause possible sickness in terms of food poisoning. But, in terms of this list, there's, again, 22. I'll put the link in the video. You guys can check it out. It kind of goes through a lot of foods that, I think many people will kind of add to their diets as we go through the new year and people change their eating habits. Another thing that I came across was this, Consumer Reports. That's what I want to talk about. Consumer Reports actually also did a similar list, and their list kind of reviewed some of the food outbreaks that occurred from 2017 through 2022. And in that, they looked at the most reported cases of food poisoning or I should say outbreaks, and also food recalls. And when you look at the list, and for those of you who are watching the video, you can obviously see it. The number one food that they have on there are leafy greens. And these are the number one foods from 2017 through 2022 that had the most number of recalls or outbreaks of food poisoning caused by bacteria. And again, just as I pointed out in terms of sprouts and even your lettuce and things of that nature, they're very, very, they're very big on, not very big, but they are very much commonly known to pass on the bacteria of E. coli. So you got to be very careful about leafy greens. Matter of fact, there was a report on CBS News did a report last month, and they talked to a woman who kind of went through this, actually, eating some bad food. So let me just play that real quick, and then we will go from there. So
I don't want to get sick.
A case of food poisoning turned Megan Ilardi into a cautious shopper.
I got so violently ill, it was frightening.
Is that when you became more concerned about your food?
Way more concerned.
Now Ilardi buys hydroponic lettuce from Tom's Market in Warrenville, Illinois. Greens grown in water instead of soil.
Why do you buy hydroponic lettuce?
I buy it because it is grown in a controlled environment. I like it. There's no pesticides added. There's not a million people touching it and messing with it.
Ilardi used to buy leafy greens and bagged lettuce. Number 1 on Consumer Reports' 10 risky recalled foods list, linked to illness, outbreaks, and recalls.
And as you heard there in the report, and again, I was looking at that same list from Consumer Reports. That woman reported that she got violently ill from leafy foods because, again, a lot of those foods are just susceptible to E. coli and other bacteria, because from the time they're picked, packaged, shipped, placed back on display in the store, and then to your house, is a lot of opportunity for those type of foods to become infected, especially if it's at point of entry, right? If you're eating, there's bagged lettuce and bagged salads. Now, if that contamination is at the bagging point, it literally goes from, its manufacturer production site to the grocery store to you, and could still house a lot of those bacterias. But on this list, it then goes through it goes through 10 different foods. And again, I'll link this in the video. It talks about cheese and deli meat, which, can, have listeria and salmonella. You have ground beef, onions, and chicken, papayas, peaches, cantaloupe, and flour. And again, I'll link all of this in the video. So if you want to kind of check this out yourself, you can see this list as well. Recommendations. I was reading on the CDC. The CDC talked about a few recommendations, because this is very big. For anyone who may not be aware of food poisoning. Sometimes people may assert or assume that food poisoning occurs when you go to a restaurant, or the food is not proper, somebody doesn't properly prepare food. But a lot of this is, can be created just in the transportation and, from the beginning process. So, you have to be aware of, how to handle these things, these foods, and how to prepare. On the CDC, it quickly talks about some foods, again, that likely are to cause food poisoning. One of the things that I thought was a great recommendation here is that it talks about chicken, and many people wash chicken, and black people you already know, so black people wash their chicken, and yes, I am being I am making a generalization, because I haven't seen it, but coincidentally, here on the CDC site, it says raw poultry is ready to cook, and it doesn't need to be washed first. So again, this is what the CDC is saying. I'm just saying, been black all my life, I've always seen chicken washed. But it says that after you wash the chicken, and I thought this was very important, after you wash the chicken, it says that you should wash your hands for 20 seconds after you wash the chicken. And now this is something that I have not been doing, because, and it makes perfect sense. It says after you wash the chicken, you then place it into your, preparation dish or bowl, however you're preparing it. And then you go and you start to work with the chicken. Well, you basically just transferred whatever bacteria that was on the chicken onto your hand, and now you're retransferring it back to the chicken. So I thought that was, very good. It also recommends sanitizing the area right around where you've prepared the chicken to ensure that, all bacteria is, being killed. A big one, I think, and, especially for those who are new to cooking or, haven't had a lot of experience with cooking, having a thermometer and making sure that your food is at least, what does it say? 165 degrees. It's typically 65 degrees that they recommend, food to get at to ensure that it is safe. Then it goes on again to talk about some other, recommendations. Definitely leftovers. Says make sure it's refrigerated at least 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. 2 hours after preparation. Definitely not doing that. So I haven't been doing that, but I definitely will be doing that is what I want to say. So it says refrigerate leftovers at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder after 2 hours. And then it goes on to talk about eggs in terms of, again, making sure they reach an internal temperature of 165 degrees, refrigerate at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. And, a lot of this, some more of these things are, I think, what many know, but I kind of wanted to just highlight those things once again. Last one, though, in terms of the raw fruits and vegetables, besides the washing and running them underwater, it says here, definitely cut away any damaged or bruised areas before preparing or eating. Sometimes you get those fruits and you see those little dents or you see those brown marks of, it beginning to overripe. Cut that stuff out because, again, it's saying that, this can lead to, you possibly getting sick. But I think the key one here is that, again, 2 hours after you cut, peel, or cook any of these fruits, again, it's recommending that they be refrigerated 2 hours after you do that. And if they're exposed to temperatures at 90 or above, like picnics, or if you're sitting in your car, then it's recommended that those foods are in a refrigerated environment within an hour. And again, keeping that at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, right? I wanted to kind of highlight that. Like I said, I know it's the beginning of the year. Many people have decided to change their diets, which is a great thing, and get healthier in terms of their diets, which is a great thing. So wanted to highlight these foods, and hopefully this information is going to help one of you out there. But as always, if you would like, you can reach us on our Instagram page, The People's Voice Podcast, if you'd like to leave a comment regarding today's podcast. And if you want to tap in with me, you can reach me at Trey Evans on all social media platforms, or you could just Google Trey Evans, and your feedback and contact is welcomed. So, that is my time for today. I do hope that this information was valuable. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the people's voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.